It's good to be with you. My name is Anna. I'm part of the team here. For those who are visiting today and guests, it's great to be with you. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's so lovely. Always love the baptisms, and it's great to welcome Esther into our family. My husband is Phil, who is the lead minister here, but he is on sabbatical, so he has not been seen for 3 months. But this is his last Sunday, so he is making the most of his last week. He'll be back at Focus and then into August, so it'll be good to have him back around as well. So we were part of those who came up 5 years ago, and this church was derelict and empty, and now it's opened up again and a church again, and it's been an amazing adventure and quite a journey. So it's good to be with you this morning and thinking of all that God has done in us and through us, but also all that is to come, because there is so much more, we believe, in that God wants to do here and through us. So this summer, for those who've been with us, we've been working through a book called Hebrews chapter 11, which lists some of the heroes of faith. It lists those who we maybe have heard those Bible stories about. You maybe have heard of Noah or David or Samuel or some of those famous people, and it lists some of those heroes. And we've been working through each character, seeing what we can find out about their lives, how they lived, what they did or didn't do, and how that points us to Jesus, how that points us not only to live well, but to know a little bit more about Jesus and who he is, and how we can also live with faith in these days, which may feel very different to those biblical stories that we read. And we've got to the end of the list. You'll be glad to know, for those who've been with us week in, week out, we are finally approaching the end of the list, just a few more to go. And it's got to that point where now it doesn't even give, some of them it gives like a few sentences, a bit of information, a bit of the backstory, tells us a little bit about it. But now they seem to have a little bit run out of steam, which I'm hoping isn't the same for us. But it's just got to a list of names, and it says in verse 32, "And what more shall I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, David, Samuel, and the prophets." And it goes on to explain a little bit more. And I don't think it's that they've got bored or that they've run out of things to say, or that these stories weren't as good as the previous ones that we've heard about. But actually I think it's a ploy, it's a way of the author saying, this list isn't complete. We've got so much more to say. There is so much more. There isn't time in the space that we've got to tell the full story of all that's gone on. And the list actually isn't complete because our stories aren't complete. At the end of this chapter, it says in the last 2 verses, "And all these, though commended through their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us, that apart from us, they should not be made perfect." Their stories aren't complete. The list of heroes isn't complete because we're not on it yet, because our stories aren't complete. Did you know that? Did you know there's a space for your name in that list of heroes? You could be one of those listed. Even Jeff, there's space for you in there. You're gonna make it. I don't know why I picked on you. It's funny that, isn't it? There's so much space here for us. There is space for more. There is time to tell of all the stories that could go on. So the question today, how do we live our lives? How do we be one of those heroes? How does our name make it into that list? How do we live our lives well? And those heroes, they're up there in heaven. They're cheering us on. They're leaning over those banisters. They're looking down and they're watching us and they're saying, "We've been through it. We know what you're facing and so much more. But you can do it. Come on, you can do it." There is encouragement. They're cheering us on, they're rooting for us, they're saying, don't give up now, keep going, don't play small, don't hide away, this is your moment. And we know the challenges, we full well know all that you're facing, we see it, we've been through it. It was different, but we've been there. Don't give up. Even in these challenges, when there's difficulty, weakness, frailty, whatever it is, health challenges, relationship challenges, financial challenges, we know that this world is a difficult place to be in. And yet, there is so much more possibility. There is so much more potential. And I'd love to think about that today. What holds us back? What stops us from stepping into that potential? What stops us living the fullness of life that Jesus has offered to us? And living with passion as opposed to passivity. Last week, my dad preached, actually. It's down the list. You're getting the whole generation of family. Maybe it'll be Zoe, my eldest, next week. That would be a shocker. Oh, my goodness. That thought just went through my head. Like, who knows what she would say? He spoke, and he kind of finished with a bit of a challenge to live with passion and to not be passive. And I want to pick that challenge up and speak into that a little bit more today. Because I think we sometimes have a choice. We sometimes have a choice to live, to choose to pick up things that maybe feel difficult. Or we can choose maybe a life that feels a little bit more comfortable, a little bit easier, but maybe isn't with the purpose and the fullness that God has for us. And that's the story that we come to today. We come to a guy called Barak. And every time I say to someone I'm preaching on Barak, they say, Barack Obama? I'm like, no, he's actually not in the Bible. It's not Barack Obama, but same name. He's listed next to David and Samuel, who, if you know some of the Bible stories, you may well have heard of them. But Barak is actually not very well known at all. We know very little about him. I suggested him to my daughter that I was talking about Barak, and she didn't even believe that was an actual name in the Bible. But what's interesting about Barak is that he is the name that's listed in Hebrews 11, but you can't actually tell his story without telling the story of Deborah. She's a phenomenal woman who sits alongside Barak and actually leads the way. And what's fascinating about this story is that there's a real reversal of roles, of expectations. God isn't afraid of messing up the systems. He's not afraid of putting a woman in charge when in that time it was unheard of. He's not afraid of saying, actually, there was a man here who was struggling and he went to a woman for help, and that's okay. God sometimes does things unexpectedly, and he changes things around, and there's a lot that we can see in this story that might tell us a few things for our lives. Deborah is incredible. She's an incredible woman. She's actually quite intimidating, even to the point of being irritating, because it seems like there's probably very little that she can't do. And we're launched right in the stories told in Judges chapter 4. We're launched right in, and there she is. She's sitting under her palm tree. She's even got a tree named after her. It's called the Palm of Deborah. She's sitting under her tree, and she's proclaiming judgment. People are coming to her when they've got a problem, they need some help with something. They come to Deborah, and they sort it out. And it's not just like, I sit here under my pillar and the church comes to me when they've got a problem. She's actually judge over the whole nation. She has a whole nation coming to her to ask her for help. And there we are in this story. And then she summons Barak to come because there's a battle that needs to happen. She's aware that there's a battle that needs to take place because somebody called Sisera is encroaching upon the Israelites, is taking over land and is coming to fight them. And it's not going to be an easy battle. She knows it's not going to be easy, so she summons Barak to tell him, come on, we've got to fight. This fight needs to happen. We can't let this happen. We can't let these people take our land. And it's pretty gruesome. The Bible doesn't hold back. There's some pretty tricky bits in there. But actually, it's talking about a fight that has to happen. And we'll come on to that bit in a moment. But there's two views of Deborah, the commentators who like to say, and as I've read up a little bit about it, there's a sense that some commentators feel that actually Deborah was second choice. She was only judge of the nation because it turned out there was no man good enough. And so when there's no man good enough, the woman gets to step in and play her part. But then there's another view that comes through. Actually, as we read through the story, you see that she's a judge, she's a prophetess, she's a deliverer, she's a warrior, she's an intercessor, she's a worshipper, she's a military leader. She's one of those people who can do everything and do it well. And so I believe it wasn't that she was plan B. She actually was above and beyond any plan A. She was God's person in that moment, in that time. And interestingly, as I read through the commentators, the judge that came before Deborah was a man called Ehud. And the commentary talks about kind of the sad state of the nation, that Ehud, the judge before, the only option they had was a left-handed judge, and it's noted that he's left-handed. And then they get Deborah, and now it's an even sadder state of affairs because it's a woman. So unfortunately for you today, you've actually got a left-handed woman preaching. So we've really reached kind of the lowest of the low at this point. But shockingly, God can use anybody, I believe, even a left-handed woman. I get severely mocked for being left-handed within my family. I won't tell you what they say because it's not appropriate. But it really isn't. But Barak is listed as the hero. Deborah is not listed. She's not the one mentioned in Hebrews 11, it's Barak. He's the one there amongst the greats. And yet the one who, when I read the story, when I think, who's the hero here? It's Deborah. She leads the way. She sends Barak into battle. She goes with him. She's the one causing things to happen, making it all get sorted. But yet it's Barak that's mentioned. And I don't think that's because the Bible isn't keen on women and only thought that men could be in the list of heroes. We see women all throughout the Bible playing their part. She's leading a nation. I actually think Barak is the one who's listed because God's wanting to tell us something different. He's not wanting to say that someone who's strong, who can do anything and everything, they're a hero. I think that God's actually wanting us to see that in Barak's weakness, being turned into a strength, he was a hero. And this is, I've lost my page now. This is what it says in Hebrews chapter 11. So I read the list of names, and it says after that, hold on a minute. I would say talk amongst yourselves, but once you get started, you won't stop. So you'll just have to hold on. Right, Hebrews 11, here we go. It says, the names are listed, and then it says what these people accomplished. So we had Gideon, Barak, Samson. Through faith, they conquered kingdoms, they enforced justice, they obtained promises, they stopped the mouths of lions, they quenched the power of fire, they escaped the edge of the sword, they were made strong out of weakness. And I think that's Barak. I think that's why he's there, because in his weakness, in his reluctance, we'll hear a little bit more about his story, in his fear, God used him. God used him and God made him strong. So there's two things that I want us to think about this morning. That maybe where we feel weak, where we feel fearful, where we feel reluctant to step up, to step into what God may be calling us, to step into that life of passion, where we're feeling those things, there's two things I think within this story that will help us. Firstly, who do we have around us? Who are the people we have speaking into our lives, helping us? And secondly, what we do with our lives matters. How we spend our time matters. So Deborah sends for Barak. She's sitting there, she's under her palm tree, people are coming to her, there's a whole nation coming to her, so it can't have been an easy job. But as soon as we're brought into this story, we see a change around. Barak doesn't come to her asking for help. Deborah summons him. And the passage says that she calls for him to come to her. She has to send for him. He doesn't seem to come willingly or eagerly or excitedly. And these are her words to him. She says, "Has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you?" It's a question. It feels like there's a little bit of a backstory here. Haven't you already been told, Barak? we've had this conversation before, or I know God's spoken to you. Has not the Lord commanded you? And maybe I'm reading that as a mother of 3 daughters, and this is the conversations that go on in my house. Haven't I already told you to clean your teeth? Have I not asked you to tidy your bedroom already? And the answer clearly is yes, 15 times, but they still haven't done it. That's the emphasis I'm reading into this passage. I may be overemphasizing it. You may read it differently. So apologies if I've got it wrong in my understanding of it. But actually Barak's there now, and now he comes. He's been summoned, he's had to come. He's facing Deborah, he's facing some quite direct questions, and he can't avoid it. And Deborah says to him, has not the Lord commanded you? And then she gives him the command of the Lord, which is to go, take an army, gather an army, take the army, and let's go, fight Sisera. You go, you fight this army. And then Barak says to her, his immediate response to this direct command is, if you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go. His immediate response is to ask that Deborah accompanies him. He recognizes the truth of what she says, that he needs to do it, he needs to act, but he's unwilling. He's fearful to step into the battle, and he doesn't want to go alone. He realizes that having someone alongside him who can speak truth, who can speak life, who can encourage, who can see the end of the battle, who can see all that is to come over the top of the hill, across the mountain, the hope, the positivity, when all he can see is the battle ahead, the challenges. He needs someone to give him wisdom and support, and maybe even a little bit of a kick. Verse 14 says, Deborah said to Barak, up, get up, come on. How many of us have said that to someone? Come on, get up. Again, thinking of my children. This is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Does not the Lord go before you? She's encouraging, she's supporting, she's with him, but she's also giving him a little bit of motivation to get going. And I think we all need this. We all need people around us who can encourage us, who can challenge us, who can speak truth into us. We need people who we can trust, who may see the circumstances a little bit differently, who may be a little bit further on in the journey and can say, I was there one time, but now I'm here, and this is what it looks like now. They can give us wisdom and help, and they'll walk alongside us and come with us in the midst of it. Who are those people? Do you have those people around you? Do you have a few people who you can trust, who you can turn to? Not just in those crisis moments, but in the everyday moments of life. Those people who know you and are willing to be there for you. Deborah had summoned Barak, spoken truth to him, and then sent him off. But actually, he then makes a further request, demand upon her. And her response? Without hesitation, she says, I will surely go with you. She's got enough to do under a palm tree with her judging and everything else going on. But actually, she doesn't hesitate. She knows that she can walk alongside him and she can go with him. She's willing to leave the safety of the palm tree and head into battle. Who do we have walking alongside us? And today we've seen the baptism and we've seen the godparents make those promises and declarations together. And Mark and Kaz have chosen people to walk alongside them, to support Esther, to keep praying for them, to be with them. And those godparents have said, we'll go with you. And Mark and Kaz, that's a great privilege to have those people. And I know we've got godchildren scattered around the country, and for me this is a good reminder that I'm there with them still, even though I don't see them. They're precious, they're part of our family, we're connected to them, and we're there to say to those parents, we'll surely go with you. In the challenges, in the joys, we're there with you. So who are we asking to walk alongside us? Barak, in his weakness, he asked Deborah to come with him. He didn't hesitate. And actually that takes boldness. That takes courage to ask somebody to walk alongside you, to show that you haven't got it all sorted, you haven't got it all together, and that you need somebody's help. Barak was courageous to stand up and to ask for help. This week, as I was writing this sermon, I got a little text message from my 7-year-old nephew. And it went like this. Hello, Auntie Anna. Are you buying Pokemon cards for Samuel, who's his brother? If you are, please can you also buy me 5 £4 packs, because Samuel already has the 6th rarest card in the world. Next message, it's Josh. Just in case I was concerned, but my sister-in-law was asking me to buy her Pokemon cards, he thought he'd better declare who it was. He didn't hold back. He was willing to ask his aunt if she could get him some Pokemon cards. I was buying Pokemon cards for his brother because it was his birthday, but that doesn't factor into his mind. He wanted Pokemon cards. His brother's got better ones than him, so who am I going to ask? I'll go to my Auntie Anna. So what did I do? I bought him Pokemon cards, of course. Because who can resist a message like that from your 7-year-old nephew? But actually, it took boldness. Well, it didn't take much boldness. It took being able to unlock his mum's phone. But he was willing to make the ask. He was willing to ask. And sometimes when we're willing to ask, and we can be quite reluctant sometimes, we do hold back and we think, oh, people will think whatever of me. Actually, sometimes we need to ask. Barak is a hero because he asked for help. What's interesting here is that Deborah called Barak. She saw something in him. And sometimes within churches or within communities, we have that kind of mentor-type relationship. So as well as friends being around us, we also have people who have been a bit further along the journey, and they can be there to help guide us. And some of us may have people around us like that, but some of us don't. And actually, it's often on the kind of onus for the younger person to look around and say, oh, I'd like a little bit of help. I need help. Maybe somebody could help me, and go to somebody and ask them who they see something good in. But actually, within our community, we have a whole lot of people who've got a lot of age, a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom. And those are good things, and we want to value those in our community. And maybe there are those amongst us who have something to give to the generation coming up after you. And maybe you could offer to somebody who you see who maybe needs a little bit of help or support. As Deborah did, as she called Barak out, as she went to him, maybe we could have that reversal here as well. We've got a lot of wisdom in this place. Let's invite others in, whichever way it is. Let's speak life and truth over one another. So who we have around us matters. The people we have in our life matter. But secondly, what we do with our lives matters. What are we passionate about? Deborah was a judge. She had people coming to her, as we've said, asking questions, needing decisions being made. She's got responsibility, oversight of a nation, and yet she stepped up. She stepped away from the tree and stepped into the battle. And the story is told in Judges 4 in kind of a narrative story form, but then in Judges 5, it's retold, but as a poem, as a song. And Deborah is also a worship leader, and she wrote this song that apparently, in my research I found out, is in the top 10 of Jewish songs. So I didn't know there was a top 10, but apparently Deborah's song is one of them. It's one of the oldest forms of poetry, Hebrew poetry, on record, and it's sustained over the years. It's lived out. It's continued to have an impact and speak into people's lives. But the song describes the state of the nation. It talks about the highways being abandoned, that people are fearful, that they don't want to go onto the main roads because they're dangerous, because they're fearful of attack. The land wasn't a stable land. And then it says in verse 7, until I arose, I, Deborah, arose as a mother in Israel. From there being no people, from people having to fend for themselves, to fight for themselves, the situation in the whole nation turns around with Deborah. And then she raises up an army. She calls the people, and their response, it's described that they willingly respond. They offer themselves to take part in the fight. They arise and they take part. And it then goes on to list the different tribes in the nations. And it actually slightly names and shames those who don't join in, who choose to stay at home and choose to make their own homes comfortable and safe and don't get involved in the fight. And it recognizes those who are willing to play their part, who step up and get involved. And actually it describes the battle, and we understand a little bit more of Barak's reluctance to get involved when we see the fact that they even won that battle was miraculous. It only happened with God's supernatural intervention. So you can see why Barak, from a human point of view, would have been nervous to get involved. But with God on their side, the battle was won. And so the challenge today for us may be the same. Although we're not being called to be an army, we're not being called to a physical fight to our enemies, actually there is a call to stand up, to arise, and to play our part in this world. When we look around our world, when we look around our nation, when we look around at our city, there is so much pain, there is so much injustice, there are so many who are struggling. There are so many who do not know God. And we know that this is a difficult season to live in. We know that the cost of living is rising. We know that there are challenges to come. I've got a meeting tomorrow, and as a city, there's a few people coming together to try and think about all that's going to hit in October in terms of food banks and in terms of provision and care for people within our city. And the guy heading that up has got this kind of phrase, I think it's from Game of Thrones, I've never watched it, but that's what he told me. And he says, within that, it says the winter is coming. And that's what his kind of mantra is. He says the winter is coming. And as churches, we need to be prepared. We need to be ready. We need to be able to support those who will be so desperately in need. And we know that coming out of this pandemic isn't straightforward. It's brought challenges that we never expected. We know that many are struggling with mental health and loneliness. We know there is so much injustice and inequality in our society. And we know that many don't have that foundation of hope and faith and a certainty of being loved and accepted. Where are we being called to stand up and fight? What is the part that we can play? Where might we need to awake and arise? And none of us can do this by ourselves. Barak didn't go by himself. He asked Deborah to go with him. But together, what can we do? For me, my passion, my fight is prayer. I want to see people raised up, praying for our city, praying for our nation, that we might see God move, because I firmly believe that prayer changes things. What's your fight? What are you passionate about? That's those words that Deborah said to Barak are the same for us today. Does not the Lord go out before you? What has God placed on your heart? What battles is he stirring for you? How can we make a difference in this world that we live in?